Here come to our next sections. So we have Simon, the founder and CEO from TESOBE. So he will be sharing about the API-driven banking beyond Open API. So he is also supporting API Days Hong Kong for a few years. So thanks again for your support. So Simon, okay, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm here. Can you hear me as well?
Yeah,
You can hear me good?
loud and clear
You can
as
see
well.
my screen?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So look, I'm starting my stopwatch. You can see
Okay,
my
so
stopwatch.
I pass the time to you. So thanks.
Okay. Hey, cool. Thanks so much. And thanks to everyone at the API Days team, API Days Hong Kong, for having me. So yeah, I'm Simon Redfern. I'm CEO of TESOBE and founder of the Open Bank project. We started this whole open banking thing back in 2010. I'm a software developer, and we've been building on the Open Bank project, open source platform for banks and fintechs and financial institutions since 2011. So today I'm going to talk about APIs that perhaps go a little broader than the kind of what is now known as the open banking kind of scope of APIs. In fact, I always envisaged open banking. Of course, it started with this kind of like access to accounts and transactions and so on. But actually, from day one, we built the Open Bank project technology to be totally API driven and API first. It's no surprise that our technology is totally API driven. But just to set some context, so open banking, started in Europe. UK was the first country to get their PSD2 compliant APIs out to the public, and it started with banks' open data, such as branches, ATMs, and customers' own data, such as accounts and transactions, and obviously access to payments and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of definition of open banking. Some people say that open finance goes beyond that, but this is all, in a sense, semantics, right? But obviously, there's a whole set of APIs which are not related to customer data. They're not related to kind of public banking data, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So some people might say, well, but we're already using APIs, right? We've got account information APIs and some of the APIs that I mentioned, but we can definitely add premium APIs. I mean, the regulators say that banks have to give their regulated APIs for free, right? So at least up to a certain kind of daily usage and all that kind of stuff. But we can add APIs which are doing other tasks such as KYC, know your customer, anti-money laundering, that kind of stuff. We can add actually more frequent APIs for account information and so on. And then we can do things like bank-specific things like doing account creation and so on, and user onboarding, right? So actually bringing a user onto the API platform itself can be done with APIs. And then we can have many APIs which are internal, right? So APIs to do with API monitoring and limiting, and APIs just to get like what we call fire hose views onto accounts. So bank tellers, they want to have views onto data. So similar shaped APIs to the open banking, but just much larger quantities of data. So here we see that, mandated APIs are obviously big in Europe, but the non-mandated APIs are growing pretty quickly. So you can see examples here from Nordea and ING. Nordea, nice graphics there. You can see the compliance APIs, but then the premium APIs, and developers and TPPs can pay for those, right? So yeah, some other examples. So yeah, we can provide APIs for credit scoring, FX, that kind of thing. And internal APIs. So, we in Open Bank Project, we have APIs for creating APIs, which is a little bit chicken and egg situation, but dynamically you can create the APIs by making post requests. And then you can tag the APIs and so on and so forth. All our documentation comes through APIs. So we have an endpoint called resource docs, and this returns the documentation of the APIs in two formats. One is Swagger, and another is something which is peculiar to Open Bank Project, which is we call resource docs. And there we actually have, like, for instance, the names of the Scala functions, which surface the APIs and so on and so forth. So yeah, the advantage of that is that any tools can see this documentation in real time. So I mean, I'm probably speaking to preaching to the converted, but obviously the main benefits of becoming API driven is that you decouple applications, right? So you have one application which does something really cool, and if you surface an interface, then you can refactor the internals of that that application. You can make it faster, more efficient. You can clean up the code, but the interface remains stable, right? This is a main thing. And if you create premium APIs, right, your organization can differentiate yourself from another organization, say another bank in this similar market, and you can encourage niche applications to be developed, which is good for your customers in the end, right? And you can, by exposing, I mean, just think of how much data you've got in your organization or your bank. By exposing some of this data to the right partners, you can potentially monetize that data. And I think if you have APIs, then you automatically, or potentially automatically anyway, provide like good single points of truth with good up-to-date documentation, like so that's good for the different business units within your organization. They know where to get data and services. So one example, for instance, API-driven billing. So obviously this is not related to the regulated open banking APIs, but we have APIs for getting the metrics from the APIs. So how many API calls are made by which consumer, and so on and so forth. And then we also have APIs for setting rate limiting, right, or enabling and disabling consumers. And if you plug that into your accounting system, right, we use a open source accounting system called Invoice Ninja, but of course, a bank or a financial institution could plug in these APIs to any accounting system that they want to use. You plug those together, and suddenly you have a billing system, right? So if the invoices by the TPP, by the third-party provider, if they're not paid, then you can rate limit the APIs, or or even like switch off the consumer completely. But you've got fine-grained access control. Actually, the previous speaker was talking about different ways to bill APIs, and I'm going to check that out properly later, because I think that's good points in that talk. Other APIs, other functionality. So we have APIs to tag your endpoints, actually. So get and set tags. We're working with a large bank, and they are using, and we haven't done a public press release yet, so I've just blanked out the name, but happy to be working with them. And they're using Figma, which is like a prototype development tool, and a good tool for producing web apps and so on. So they are able to get all their APIs into these into Figma to use data, and even to get this it's possible to select APIs and like filter APIs that you want to use from a third-party tool such as Figma, right? So you don't have to be using the Open Bank Project API portal or API Explorer, which, by the way, is fully driven by APIs, right? So there's no copy and paste of Swagger files or anything like that. It's all real-time over APIs. So other APIs that we have is APIs for creating dynamic entities, which automatically create CRUD endpoints for adding new types of data. And as I mentioned earlier, you can create APIs using APIs, and you can also, on the right here, you can add them to API collections, right? So if you have hundreds and hundreds of APIs, then you probably want to be able to group them. You can group them via tags, but you can also explicitly put them into collections and give them give certain people or certain groups of people access to these collections. Another use of APIs is collecting device data, actually. So this is a rather crowded screenshot, so I'll just let your eyes rest on it for a second. It's in the background. It's showing a web app that we have called SOFIT, which was used recently by a large credit scoring company and an NGO in Italy called Microfinanza. And we used this app, which is using the Open Bank Project kind of standard APIs for getting accounts and transactions, but also APIs for adding tags and so on to transactions. And then our partner wanted to get data from the phone, following user consent, of course, but say like battery level, number of contacts, this kind of stuff, to build up a kind of credit score. And so we were able to put APIs into the phone SDK. It's the what's the name of it? It's the update from PhoneGap. Actually, it's not called PhoneGap anymore, but the same technology. And we're able to marry the kind of data, so correlate the data coming from the web app, so there's a hosted web app and the phone, and link those together. And that's all done via APIs. Via these kind of create user attributes for each user. So a very flexible way of creating data, so we don't have to hard code like attributes like battery level or something like that. We can the developer can store key value pairs, basically. So like a kind of what's the word? the word escapes me. But yeah, you could use a kind of standard way to name these attributes and then provide documentation for them. So it's pretty flexible. Yeah, so this is just showing some of the Open Bank project data model, and all that stuff is exposed via APIs. So actually, even configuration of our portal and so on and so forth, and translation of the portal and translation of documentation, actually. So we've recently been working with a large bank in Mexico on a regulatory API project, and actually we translated all our suite of applications, and part of that is providing the documentation in Spanish, right? So you're able to submit translations of APIs over the API, and yeah, and that's a little bit work in progress, actually. But maybe at another API Days talk, I can give a talk about that translation topics. Okay, so let's see how many minutes I've got. My phone keeps on going off. Okay, I'm at 16 minutes, so doing good. So how can my bank become, well, I would say, yeah, API driven or more API driven? Well, and obviously this relates to any organization, but eat your own dog food, right? So and this will encourage you to have more APIs, realize that pretty much everything can be API or interface driven. So I think a previous talk from IBM, they were mentioning Kafka. So we support Kafka as well, actually, in Open Bank project. So we have interfaces, REST interfaces at the front and the back, but also interfaces to things like Kafka. Yeah, and then just realize, look all this type of data. So you've got regulated bank data like ATM branches, regulated customer data like accounts and transactions, balances, payments, so on and so forth. But then just think about all the non-regulated bank data that you have. Like, what might be useful? What could you monetize? What could people build apps on? And then non-regulated customer data. Internal process, external processes that could benefit from APIs. So many, and then if that's not enough, then you can use this kind of reverse brainstorming technique, which is just, what API would I never have, like a red card, and then, I don't know, come up with that, whatever the answer to that question is, and then reverse it, and you'll find yourself with some interesting APIs. Oh wow, that's fast. I was fast. I don't know if that's too fast, but yeah, I would be happy to take questions. By the way, you can look at this. We have a sandbox online, API sandbox.openbankproject.com. So if you want to have a play around, you can register for free there, and we definitely won't spam you. And you can have a look. There's some like dummy transaction data if you want to use it. And by the way, this is our like a kind of functional overview, just showing how the different layers of our Open Bank project technology, showing how you can split the modules as they are. You can either run them monolithically, or you can run them on many different nodes. And we support Kubernetes and Red Hat OpenShift. And I mentioned these interfaces at the bottom for interfaces to other protocols like Kafka, Akka, databases, and so on and so forth. So in one buzzword, interfaces all the way around, as I think someone said to Bertrand Russell once, it's turtles all the way down, and we have interfaces all the way around. Yes.
Okay.
Questions?
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks, Simon. So, yeah, you share about the Open Bank project, and honestly, I also tried it previously, and it's very comprehensive, and I can see there's something also in new development as well. So, maybe some quick question. Maybe that's what I understand from the local Hong Kong community. So, you mentioned about doing the API banking, but most of the problem nowadays is that maybe their core banking system may not be fully ready, and then they need to do quite a lot of work to see what data they need to expose, etc. So may I know how the Open Bank project's positioning? Is this like a sandbox or POC so that they can taste it, or is it actually a production ready thing that they can use?
Yeah, so it's definitely both, right? So we often start our kind of journey with a bank from a sandbox point of view, but more and more we also start from like diving into production straight away. So, for instance, the bank I mentioned in Mexico, the priority is the production APIs, but we also provide APIs on a sandbox as well. And it's basically the same technology, but obviously in a different configuration. So in a sandbox mode, all the data is here basically. So we read and write to the Open Bank project database. Actually, but also in production mode, we sometimes store some data in Open Bank project database, right? So actually the distinction between sandbox and production is, I mean, obviously the use is different, right? But the lines are blurring a bit because sometimes people have a sandbox and then they want to start introducing real data into it, and then obviously we might run some more nodes and so on and so forth, and treat access a bit differently. But basically, it's the same technology. So Open Bank project with a bit of Nginx in front for SSL termination, and we're doing all the JWS validation, MTLS validation, etc., etc. So it's a production and compliance ready platform, but you can put it into sandbox mode. And when you put it into sandbox mode, then that's a lot easier for developers to get started, right? Because they don't have to jump through the MTLS hoops and maybe OAuth 2 with PKCE and all this kind of stuff. They can use like simpler authentication methods to get started, right? So.
Okay, got that. Yeah.
Yeah, but the APIs are the same, right? So that's the great thing. So when they start using the production version, then it's the same APIs, just with extra authentication on top.
Yeah. Because from our understanding, the API is mainly the channel part. So there's always a lot of challenge talking about the backend system, core system. So there still needs some effort to integrate those things. So that's my understanding.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it can take months just to get VPN access into a bank, or to or to find some documentation, and then finding the right people who knows where the data is, right? So yeah, it's a long process for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks Simon for sharing. So if anyone interested in the Open Bank project, feel free to reach out Simon and then see the projects. Actually, it is quite self-serve. I also tried to pay a bit before. So once again,
fantastic.
thanks Simon.
Hey, most welcome, and happy days, everybody. Yeah, happy days.
Okay, thanks.
Ciao.
Okay.
Bye. Happy API days.
Bye bye. Okay,
Bye.
yeah. Bye bye.